Here we are.
Yeah.
Spiritual Matters. We're finally doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been talking about starting this podcast for a while. Space to have certain conversations that we felt were important, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's good to finally launch it, and hopefully what we can discuss here and, conversations we can have, hopefully people enjoy them. People can maybe take something away from them. As we go into these topics of great importance. The name Spiritual Matters really conveys this, has this double entendre. I don't know, we never fully discussed that when we were naming it, but it's like matters of spiritual nature, and that spirituality matters, right? That we're in the world and navigating this with this hopefully rooted in a deeper reality. So anyways, it's good to finally be here.
It's wonderful.
And chat.
Wonderful. Yeah. We've all been accruing experience, some of which we can't fully account for, and yet it leads us on. And there's some experience we need to leave behind. And that's even what compelled us to begin with in terms of our search and actually moving into larger environments internally and even in our interaction with the world. So it's good to be here because many of us have been almost, I wouldn't say stewing, but incubating these experiences. And sometimes it takes a while for us to begin to really apprehend or comprehend the significance of them without being, I mean, we have to go on with life anyway. However, there's more to take note of perhaps than we were previously aware of.
Yeah. So with Spiritual Matters, as we've discussed, we're gonna sit here every month and have hopefully a great conversation, and we might have someone joining us every so often to really go into their journey, their experience, their wisdom, their lessons learned, and just spend time with that, as you're saying, kind of just like letting that in a sense catch up, right? Whatever's being incubated, bring that forward. So yeah, it's quite exciting. I'm glad we're here finally, and get to do this together. And so, real people, real wisdom, real change. That's what the podcast is about, And so, why don't we get started with the two of us here talking about one topic that I think we're both quite moved by, which is this question of coming back to the experience of knowledge in the moment, right? When we say knowledge, is this greater intelligence, this deeper intelligence, this greater mind, and the experience of being in the world, and the challenge of staying in touch with that greater intelligence. I wanted to spend some time just kind of unpacking this notion, right, of this greater intelligence, this knowledge, this knowing capacity, and what that really is.
Right. Well, it's a bit of a discovery because this greater intelligence at the experience level has probably been with us from childhood, let's say. It depends. You'd have to go back in time. And I encourage each of us to maybe take a little bit of time at some point to do that, to almost recover our own experience of whether you want to use the word insight or larger, greater awareness in the moment or whatever. I can remember instances in childhood. I won't recount them, although it would be pretty interesting if I did, if we could, but honoring our time here together. So going back in time to those moments and the feel of that, okay, and bringing that forward, because often this greater intelligence, sometimes it's a realization at the level of thought, but often it's an experience. So it sort of stands apart somewhat from our normal, everyday, ambient life, in and out experience. But there's something about this. And so, I was thinking about the term greater intelligence and how would I or we even describe it,
Right.
right? Just to take a stab at it, I mean, we could refer to it as our deeper self.
Mm.
Maybe the core of our being, a place
Mm-hmm.
deep within us, right? Or a higher self, even. It depends. I don't want to,
Right.
I don't want to apply too many thoughts or ideas. I want to keep it at the level of experience for sure. It could be the quiet voice within, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, it may take a different kind of form or expression across the span of time, and we need to let it and honor that.
Yeah. It's like in any of these descriptions, there's a implied an implied other, right? Or an implied sort of greater sense of something that we're somehow tethered to, connected to, that is part of us. But I feel like when we use these terms to refer to it, greater mind, greater intelligence, deeper mind, the knowing mind, it's like it's acknowledging that while we are in the world and we are people and humans, and that there is this aspect of us that somehow is different, that somehow is like a different quality, that somehow like engenders experience that stands out from the minutia or the very worldly rest of the experience of being in life. So it's like that's the thing that we're circling around. That's like, what is that? What's that? Because it stands out at different points in our lives. Perhaps it stands out in another too, where we sort of recognize and we're like, whoa, there's something different there. That's not just that person expressing or doing. It's like there's something deeper there.
Yeah, it's interesting if you go back and spend time with some of these select experiences, you may find that this quote deeper experience seems to come to us on the surface, but afterwards there seems to be some sort of, I don't want, whether I could use the word calling or pull to come to it. So it may come to us. And then there's this, and this may express itself as time goes on, depending upon each of us, in our inclination towards spiritual practice even. I remember, oh God, this is fun. When I was in college, I used to, there was a reservoir located just south of the campus, and I would go running around the reservoir. And there ended up being an encampment. Somebody had established like an encampment on the reservoir. And this is a public space, and it was in the woods, but still in all. And it was a man, and he had a dog, and he had a tent, and whatnot, whatever. And eventually, I actually thought I felt compelled to go engage with him. And it was fascinating and a really wonderful engagement. And he was actually a six-figure, at that time, executive, super successful in life. You know what I mean? And what he said to me was, I got to a point where I couldn't ignore that there was something else for me. And that environment wasn't the environment. So I'm taking a break, and I just need to be here. And fortunately, the local authorities had engaged with him, heard his story, and said, you know what, let's let this man be. And so I had a chance over the months to periodically, and I even brought him baked bread sometimes. You know what I mean? But it was fascinating to hear that he said, there's something for me, there's something else, and I just need to go be with it. It was very powerful for me to experience him and what he was saying. And it created an acknowledgement within me that I was feeling something similar.
Totally.
In terms of something was pulling, something was calling me, and even away from my plans.
What age was that?
God, I would say I was probably 20 or 21 at the time. And I was a science major and all this kind of stuff. And I was going to go, conquer the world, but there was this pullback, and to see him and experience what he was saying and how genuine he was and how humble he was in the face of it. It was wonderful, actually.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's an example of like someone expressing something coming from a deeper place that is unexplainable and yet so real.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
you also mentioned this thing of when you started talking now of sometimes we go to it and sometimes it calls
To
us
us.
to us. Yeah, and so yeah, it captures beautifully this kind of like relationship, right? Where
Right.
like I don't know, in a sense we might venture away from it, or we might not be as attentive to it or something, and we might have a moment of like remembering and like, wow,
Yeah.
where is this? Like, how can I refine that?
Yeah.
It's like, when's the last time I experienced that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then sometimes we're doing life and then
Right.
something snaps us out and it's like, whoa, we
Right.
get called back.
Right. Fascinating.
Mm.
Fascinating. Yeah. It's great. Yeah. I know as a student, I took note of certain people who were well known in science. And I periodically had the opportunity, even then, to encounter a little bit about their story. If somebody had taken the time to write about their lives, or had they been interviewed or whatever. And it was fascinating to hear about their moments of discovery that actually began years before. Some of them had insights in childhood that led ultimately to a scientific discovery that occurred well into their career in science. So I thought, what is that process? What is going on there?
Yeah.
Is there another plan for our existence that we're not aware of? Are we needed in some other way than we think or plan?
Right.
And anyway,
Yeah.
so this greater intelligence.
So part of the inspiration for the topic we want to chat about today was from this book, Steps to Knowledge, the Book of Inner Knowing. And it's a series of steps, and one of them says, is ask the question, knowledge, this greater intelligence is with me, where am I? Right. So it's kind of, and such a powerful question because it really points to, well, where is it that we go to be disconnected in those cases where we don't?
Right.
Where we're not able to listen to those things that perhaps down the road
Right.
are going to be really important.
Yes. Yes, you're referring to step 2
Yeah.
in Steps to Knowledge, one of 365, believe it or not, steps. And I felt compelled in somewhat recent times, and because I went back to step 2 to be with it. If there was something really important there, and I thought, knowledge, or what I most deeply know, is with me, but where am I?
Yeah.
So it's asking an important question, because one of the big challenges that I faced, and I'm sure I'm not alone, is this feeling of almost being disconnected from yourself the bulk of the time, which is to say you're absorbed, you're doing other things, you're not present to yourself, to the extent where, I don't know if you've experienced this, but you come home at the end of the day and you stop, sit down, pour yourself something to drink, hopefully not an alcoholic beverage necessarily, and you ask yourself, God, where have I been all day? You literally have been absent on some level to yourself. And I think if I look back and I see how prominent an experience that has been, and so the question is not just knowledge is with me, where am I? There's knowledge is with me, how am I? And so if I wasn't present, what was happening? Compassionately, just look, right? And it's pretty interesting to start to take note of all this by normal, I mean the ambient states of mind and emotion and even inner states that you may be in, but not knowledge is with you, but where am I? I'm in one of these states. Is there a step to take in that moment, which is to say, is it time? Can I go to knowledge? Knowledge is with me. Where am I? I'm in this state. In this state, can I just go to knowledge? Even if I'm stressed, even if I'm preoccupied, even if I'm whatever, overstimulated, even if I'm whatever, go to knowledge anyway. And from this state, go to knowledge. So what I've been doing is utilizing step 2, knowledge or inner knowing is with me. Where am I? Locating that state, taking a moment to honor it, acknowledge it, and then say, in this state, I'm going to go to knowledge. I'm going to go there.
Yeah, what I'm hearing there is, you ask the question of like, well, how am I? And it's almost like that almost seems, as I hear you say it, to be like a necessary step to really kind of come to that recognition of, oh, I'm not with this greater intelligence, right? Like, therefore, how am I really?
Right.
And then it's like a conscious choice from that point to like, even though I'm X, I'm still going to choose to reconnect.
It's a position of self-compassion too, non-judgment. It's like, it's just acknowledge, it's talk about self-knowing. It's just plotting your position, seeing where that is, where you are, but even from there, can I go to knowledge and can knowledge reach me? If I stop in this moment, in this state, in this condition, maybe I'm not reachable. Understandable. I mean, there's lots of reasons and lots of moments where I haven't been, but say, okay, but I'm available, even in this state, even in this moment. I want to be available, whether I am or not, So in a way, there's a moment of self-compassion and non-judgment necessary. I don't want to judge myself, and I don't want to be self-preoccupied either.
Yeah, it's almost more like a noticing.
Right.
Yeah. I wonder, like, when we say, we kind of invoke this language of, am I reachable or am I listening? And the question that comes up for me is, how do I know that I'm in that state? Right? Like, okay, so there's a noticing of I'm not in that state, therefore I am preoccupied, stressed, too anxious, whatever it is. And it's almost like, okay, so what's it like to be in a state of listening or in a state of relationship and connection with this deeper mind? What comes up for you when I ask that?
Oh, well, that's an interesting thing, that the nature of and the feel of the relationship. Now that for me has taken some time to be with, to not make it be something, but like, just what is it for what it is. And anyway, what's beginning to develop is, in a way, in a sense of intimacy that I don't think I've experienced before, just in the sphere of my own space. So it's been a challenge because these quote states, whether mental states, and I've actually taken time to sort of look at what they are. Just take note. It's been a source, and I have to admit, of whether they've been the source of disconnection or whether they're the effect of other things that created a state of disconnection. Right. And so I just say, be it as it is, that's the spectrum of my experience. I'm going to strive within these states to reach out. And what's really been interesting is that it's been interesting. I honestly, to take a moment to step off the surface and sort of just gravitate into a quieter space. There's a whole environment in there. So from whatever is going on up on the surface, just taking a moment, I'm discovering there's an entire environment. And I think it's got levels or depths. I'm not sure. I mean, we experience this, I call it the field of the mind. We may, to quote, transiting this environment when we're daydreaming, when we may be contemplating something, when we're doing formal stillness practice. So I think in these moments, knowledge is with me. Where am I? How am I? I'm going to go to knowledge. I think here and there, step by step, we may be creating little pathways within the field of our, I don't know whether you want to call it the mind or not. And so anyway, it's a richer kind of experience I've found. to have this added sort of level of dimension to the moment.
That's interesting. As you were speaking, I was thinking something, and now I can't remember at all. but oh yeah, that there was, I asked kind of like, what is this? How do we know we're in this state? And it's, what I heard was like, it's actually tricky. It might be very individual.
Yeah.
You mentioned like this sense of like intimacy or this sense of something like, and as you were saying that, it kind of, there's like this softness, I think, perhaps a softening into, the layers of the mind. And it almost seems to me like what really might be happening in our experience, as far as we can tell, is an exertion of will in the direction of reconnecting. Like that's perhaps as far as our mind can conceive of it, is we experience the choice of wanting to be in relationship with whatever this deeper mystery is. And then the experience of that, well, that's perhaps ineffable, and perhaps it happens beyond the scope of what we can describe. What is it like? I don't know. What I do know is there's a point in time where, after noticing that I'm not connected, or that I'm not in a relationship, or that I'm not reachable, there is a point in which I can choose to become reachable. And that exertion of will and a choice, that's the moment of that's what it's like. It's like turning, the physical motion of turning and facing, because I want to. I choose this and not that.
It's interesting as you say this. There was this, I know this is crazy, there was this NBA player, National Basketball Association professional basketball player, whose name I won't mention, but he said something that really struck me. He was being interviewed at one point, and I think they were asking him, so-and-so, so it's amazing in terms of your shot accuracy and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, one thing that's helped me, he says, is when I'm in the act of shooting, I say to myself, I have all the time in the world to make this shot. And he says, there's all manner of everybody all over me, right? You know what I mean? It's like that. But no, it's like, this helps, it just literally slows down time. And I have space to connect with what I'm doing. And so he said, that's what tends to happen for me in the game. And I remember hearing that and going, oh, that's interesting. You know what I mean? I have all the time in the world to make this shot. In other words, there's all this stuff going on or whatever, but you know what I mean? I'm almost going to step onto my own reality band for a moment. I'm going to depart that, go here, function from here, and I'll return to that. So that's...
Yeah. I mean, if this, for me, that's what's pointing to is the nature of this greater intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Is it's not an intelligence that emerges from our mind, which is our worldly mind, which is so, it is tied to time, right? It's like, that's how we experience our mind. I thought this yesterday, I'm thinking this now, it's like, so it's almost bound to time, right? Bound to the this, then that, and the demands of life, and the next thing and the other. And that's what being in this life seems, that's what it's all about. We're in the world where we operate in time and everything. And yet, again, this is like revealing a little bit of this greater intelligence, that it resides perhaps beyond time. It resides in a place that is quiet, still, that is not caught up in all that. It can reach us there, and it can work through us in there, but it's not from there. And so it's like, oh, okay. And it's accessible to me, and it's you can become intimate with it, such that it's almost being intimate with oneself. So what does that say about ourselves? So
that's fascinating. Yeah. Right. So there are these congested moments we're all experiencing day to day. There's a lot of density in our modern life. Whether, oh gosh, there's tons of complexity.
Mm.
There's the immediacy of information in the hand. Instead of asking ourselves, we might go directly to these other sources of information because they're so readily available to us, but there's so much of it. I used to call, this is the term used is, the acronym TMI, too much information, right? And so it's very dense and compacted in a way up on the social, personal level of our experience. And yet just stepping for a moment, the step 2 invites us to do this, to step off the surface for a moment and almost go into another time sequence for a moment.
Yeah.
Time and experience sequence. It's just a little, and we'll return, we'll go back. It's right there, it's right above us, it's right nearby. Right. But we just stepped aside for a moment. And it's just important because, yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I just want to share a little bit of some reflections that I've had on the journey just regarding this state of disconnection, right? Like what in this world, it seems to be, especially in this modern time, this modern world, my goodness, right? Like these, I call this little weapons of mass distraction, right? They're just, we have access to literally all the information in the entire world at any given time, an abundance of information, an abundance of ideas, an abundance of conversation, and anything, all sorts of distractions, stimulation, entertainment, anything. This is like, today's world is like a Disneyland for the separate mind. It's like, if you want to remain in a separated state, disconnected from this greater intelligence, I don't know if there's ever been a better time in human history than for the separate mind to have options.
Right.
And so I know I've experienced that tremendously, like, because you want to remain connected to the world. The world, to an extent, is online, and my goodness, there's endless potential for distraction. That's just one of the examples. I mean, even offline, the world seems to be almost, it can lead to these modes of disconnection. So anyways, I've mapped out like 3 modes of disconnection that I want to share with you that I found helpful kind of in this noticing. And I've kind of boiled them down to 3 that I call, I'm either in distraction mode, I'm in dreaming mode, or I'm in do mode. And like these 3 are the ones that I've noticed, like whenever I'm not reachable or I'm not listening, I'm in one of these 3. Like distraction, as we were talking about, is like it's almost, it's a state of what I think behind it. You were mentioning this, which is like behind those states. Well, what's actually driving that state? For me, like when I'm in distraction, there's like a little engine of avoidance behind it. Like there's something I'm avoiding, right? That whether it's something I know I need to do, whether it's something I need to rectify, a relationship I need to rectify, a task I need to accomplish. Perhaps it's something from my past that I need to resolve. Perhaps it's just really I'm avoiding the state I'm in. Just I'm avoiding recognizing like, hey, I'm not doing well, and I need to like really pause and take care of myself. And I'm avoiding that recognition because it's painful, right? And so, boom, distraction. Like all of a sudden, I'm there, and it's that's the it's often what I've realized is when I'm deep in that mode and I'm really not reachable, it's often a sign that like I'm not doing that great. I need to exercise compassion with myself to bring myself out of that.
Right.
And then dreaming is like any time that I'm engaged with like the projections of my mind, like I'm anxious about the future, or I'm like regretful of the past, or I'm caught up in like excessive planning, which I've found is like it's like a coping mechanism for the mind, right? It's like the illusion of control, right? Like, oh, I got the plan, and therefore everything's going to be okay. And so now I'm, and I call it like getting ahead of God, where I'm like, no, I got to figure it out, and so then it's going to be this and that, and all of a sudden I'm not reachable because I'm in my plans and I'm in like in my world of how things are going to work out, and I'm no longer in relationship to life, to the world, to others as they really are. I'm suddenly working with how I think things should be, or could be. I'm going to make them this way, and it's like, whoa, okay. Once I'm in that state, I'm really not in a state of listening and, being able to be reached and guided. Okay. And the third is this doing mode.
Yes.
Which is like ironic in my mind because the world is a place of action. And so, this inner guidance, this inner intelligence, this greater intelligence, it's not just some fanciful notion that we escape to, it's actually to guide action in the world. And yet, ironically, we can get lost in action. At least I can. It's like, I'll go and start the action, and then I'll get so caught up in it that I become disconnected from this inner guidance as I'm doing the thing.
Right.
And then I'm caught up in it, and it like that happens to me a lot in like work related things. That's where like I get back home and I'm like, man, where have I been? I did a bunch of things, but I feel like I was not reachable.
Right.
You know what that is like?
Oh yeah. Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah. I think I so hear you. And honestly, I in terms of being drawn to it, either in the moment, right? If it's just step off the surface for a moment, knowledge is with me, my deeper awareness is there, I'm with it, and then you go back up to the surface. But as time goes on, if we're able to migrate into quieter states and begin, I wonder if developmentally it has an effect upon us in terms of capacity. So there's this density, in a sense, work density or cognitive density, which in a way does serve us and is needed, etc. As we know, and yet there are larger realities looming, and I just wonder if our being able to gravitate into these more spacious environments, and I'm talking more formal practice now, okay? And at some point, maybe we'll have an opportunity together here on the podcast to talk about building a stillness practice. You know what I mean? Which today is a real challenge. But I'm just saying that departing the surface of the mind to whatever degree we can, in a sense, we're being pulled or called to maybe larger realities. And so there's over time, there's a need to develop, in a sense, capacity. And it's not something I don't think we can do in and of ourselves. It has to do with our contact with larger reality, with a larger intelligence, which is what's within us, and with what it's in contact with. So I know that sounds hypothetical. However, I feel that spiritual practice, in a sense, for me, has prepared me for the larger realities that I have been exposed to in the greater work that I'm engaged with and involved in. So, yeah.
I think what you're speaking to there is like, what's the point of spiritual practice,
right?
Or stillness practice, or intentional meditation. It's like it's not just a reprieve, but it's actually to enable those channels, maybe to like, it's like to make it easier to return.
There you go. Right.
I think it's almost inevitable in as a human in life, in this world.
Right.
It's inevitable that we lose connection.
Oh my God, yes.
And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
To acknowledge that, as opposed to like us being like, the goal is to never forget,
Right.
It's like, it might be a little tricky.
Right.
It might take a long time. But and perhaps we get to points where we don't forget as much, but it's like the world just has a way, of just like pulling you into a disconnected, separate state of mind. Even like ironically, as I shared, at least for me, ironically through doing. Okay, I'm starting to do the thing that I know I need to do, and then I get lost in the doing, and so it's almost like the challenge isn't to never forget and never become disconnected. Like the challenge is like how much can I notice?
How much can I what?
How much can I notice?
Yeah.
When I'm drifting, or when I'm becoming unreachable, can I catch it early? And then how much can I build up my desire to catch it, and my willingness to choose again, to be in relationship with this greater intelligence. So it's like maybe that's the challenge more than it is the goal is to never, be disconnected. No.
Right.
Because if not, I feel like it leads to this sense of not wanting to engage with the world.
Right.
Because then we're afraid it'll contaminate our connection.
Yeah, I know if that was the basis for asceticism. I mean, I come from a long line of priests, nuns, and monks and hermits, actually, on one side of my family, believe it or not.
Really?
And so, two of my sisters were nuns, nuns. And there was some affinity there at one point because you could just finally just be with. In that environment, the priority is to be with the sacred, right? But at a knowledge level, I was compelled into the world. It was such a dichotomy, really, in a way. So it's, but anyway.
Totally. I mean, and that's the thing, right? Is like if you go to like an ascetic, place like a nunnery or a temple or whatever, it's very stripped of worldly things.
Right.
I think on purpose, obviously, because worldly things tend to be very distracting and engaging, and perhaps for the people who that is appropriate for, that's great.
Right.
But for those of us who need to be in the world of action, in the world, and talking to people and engaging and being, using devices and technology and all that, it comes with the territory. It's like, the tendrils of the separate reality will latch on in some way or another.
Yeah.
Perhaps after a while, we can become a little more impervious to it.
Right.
But it's still, it's part of the challenge of being here, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost an ongoing invitation of request to be in the game.
Right.
I mean, another quote, steps to knowledge is the world I see is preparing to enter the greater community, is entering the greater community. Now that's big. I mean, you know what I mean? So to be part of a world that's preparing, to confront larger realities that are right around the corner, if not here. And so that's the calling, to be, in a sense, in the game with everybody else, you know what I mean? Building awareness, growing human awareness and responsibility as we face these larger thresholds that are here, actually. And to bring our greater intelligence to that world, to whatever extent it needs to speak, if that's even the term to use, to convey. To convey.
To be in the game.
Yeah.
So, okay. So there's that challenge. And it's like we talked about this aspect of it, which is noticing the disconnection, noticing the modes of disconnection, the ways in which we go to these places within ourselves, when we get lost in the world. And then there's okay, what's it like to notice and return? Like perhaps what are techniques or practices to do so? Like that's something that I've tried to map. How do I get back? So anyways, I have two things that I want to share.
Please.
One is, okay, there's the noticing, and that I don't know. There's the noticing piece. I think is a I think perhaps one of the keys that and you've spoken to this is compassion, self-compassion. They're really, how am I doing?
Oh gosh.
Right. And it's almost like, what I've noticed is these three kind of modes that I tend to get into that I've mapped, right? The distracted, dreaming, or doing. There's moments when I'm in these modes where it's like almost for a second, right? I might be like in the depths of distraction, and doom scrolling or whatever, and it's like for a moment, for a second, there's an opening, or I see my situation, I see my predicament, and I see I don't want to be here. Like, this is not the mode I want to be in. I actually want to be in relationship with this. But it's almost like a tiny window in time that opens up for me to make a choice, right? And many times that window comes and I pass it, and it might show up in doing mode or in dreaming mode, right? But then there's like that moment where I can choose. And so then it's like, okay, what am I choosing? And I found that like there's like two things, there's two routes I can go if I do choose to come back into like a relationship. And one I call like up. So it's like I choose to remember like a greater intention, right? It's like whatever remembrance I have thus far of a deeper part of myself, or of a greater reality, like I choose to just take a moment and remember that. Just bring it into my awareness, right? Like, remember what can I recall thus far, right? Like in terms of my being, and I remembering a greater reality, remember this greater intelligence that it even exists, and that I do have a relationship with this greater intelligence, right? And so it's almost like going up a level. It's like in these modes of distraction or doing or dreaming, I'm caught in the web of the mind,
right?
So up is like, I'm going up, I'm going to spirit, mind, knowledge, I'm going up here, and that's going to bring me into a sense of remembering, and in a sense surrendering to like a greater intelligence. And the other trick I've found is if that's not working, or if that's not what's most alive in the moment, is in, which is like, all right, I'm trapped in the web of this middle ground of the mind, I'm going into my body. Like, I'm going to engage my senses of this perceptual body, and maybe I engage my auditory sense, and I just start listening to the world, and then I notice like, oh, that's okay. And then I notice, I might notice the buzzing of whatever's buzzing right there. Or I might notice the bird that's chirping in the background that was chirping all along, but I wasn't aware of it. So it's almost like coming back into my body and my perceptual senses, I come back into relationship with the world.
Yeah.
And the world has a sneaky way, especially the natural world, but the whole world has a way of bringing us back into a realization of something greater, because it's so incredibly huge and majestic, and like, wow, what is going on, So anyways, that's like the other path, is coming back into my body, engaging the senses, and through that becoming present to reality as it really is, not as it is between these two ears in my mind.
Right.
And all of a sudden, wow, I can enter into relationship with this greater intelligence again through that.
See, this is what each of us have the opportunity to discover for ourselves very incrementally, which are these, I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to call them strategies or anything like that. I mean, whatever. It's like a little tiny menu of self-momentary treatments that help us deal with the situation of being contained and in whatever states we're in, right? Completely contained and surrounded with the state. So for each of us, I know for myself, sometimes it's a moment of self-love. It's almost just taking a moment and feeling what I genuinely do feel, which is a sense of appreciation that, I've held it together, that kind of thing, all these years, that kind of thing. So, it's an intimate moment, or it's whatever. So these are important little menu of strategies to have to bridge us from the disconnected to the connected. That's what that step is all about. It's a bridge. It's a key. It's a key to unlock a state of disconnection for a moment. Okay, to what end? We will all see as time goes on. Or maybe we won't. Maybe it'll remain a complete mystery, but I will say that this is an enriching experience, to step off the surface for a moment and to join, to reach out to join a larger reality that exists within us and beyond, right? For a moment. I mean, sometimes that larger reality can involve the circumstances we're in. I remember standing in line. I was at a pharmacy and waiting in line to check out, and the cashier was behind the counter. Just as I stood there, and I was taking a moment. It was an hourly. I was so knowledge is with me. Where am I? Okay, and then I was looking around at the environment, and I looked at this man. And I thought, I wonder how he is. He doesn't look well. Is he tired? Whatever. And I was just standing there. And the other person checked out, and I'm standing there still looking in a prolonged moment. Knowledge is with me. Where am I? What do I see? What do I know? Right? So then my time came up to go to the register to check out, and he turned and looked at me and went to look for what I needed to put. And I just looked at him and I said, "How are you? How are you doing?" And he stopped for a minute and he looked at me like, and then he looked at me again. He said, "I'm not well." And I said, oh, wow. I can imagine. And he literally stopped, walked all the way around the counter. Here you have people in line waiting to check out, comes over to me and gives me a hug and says, "Thank you." And goes back around the counter and rings up my purchases. And we have this moment, right? And then it was just, so that was an in the moment. Knowledge is with me. Where am I? And then what is happening around me?
Right.
And so anyway.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And that was a great moment, actually.
Yeah.
And I was in a state that was more expanded than my personal state, which enabled me to feel or sense into maybe the condition of this individual for a moment. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I'd like to, really support and encourage all of us here and there to take these opportunities, whether it's on the hour, which I utilize the hourly to call myself to this, actually, if I have the presence of mind to do it. So anyway.
Yeah. That's a beautiful story. To me, it kind of talks about not just reconnecting with oneself for one's own benefit, but what's depicted in that experience you had is that in checking in with oneself,
I know,
it actually brought one into connection with another person, with a stranger.
I know,
and you were able to see them,
and
then they were able to see themselves.
I know.
That was just beautiful. It just moved my heart.
I know. I've developed an eye for the body language of a person who might be having an experience, a noetic experience. They may be or may not be. And I remember in my former career sitting in a chart room in a hospital, doing my work. And one of the clinicians came to the desk opposite me with the chart that they were going to be documenting in, and just the demeanor of this person, they just looked like they were troubled by something. And so I just kept looking at this woman, and then finally I said, "So and so, what's happening? Or what's going on?" Because I could just tell something was going on. And she had just gone in to prepare a patient for surgery. Okay, so they had to sign all the consent forms, and she had to do draw some blood samples, etc. And she came out to the desk, sat down. What she said to me, I said, "What's going on? Are you okay? Or something going on?" And she just said, "I have a strong feeling this patient's going to have an intraoperative stroke."
Mm.
And I said, "You do?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Should you call the anesthesiologist? Or should you notify the doctor?" She said, "What are they going to do?" You know?
Mm.
But she said, "One thing I did do in the moment," I said, I apprised the patient of the risk that could happen. So at least I told them, sweetheart. I mean, the burden of knowing. I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes knowledge comes with a burden in a way, right? Because we may end up knowing more than we really would want to know, you know, but that was a pretty amazing moment. That she was able and willing to know that. But then there always will be the question, is there anything I need to do beyond that, right? So anyway, these are the larger realities that are requesting our participation and engagement, you know?
Yeah, we come full circle back to, you know, us reaching out to this greater intelligence and this greater intelligence reaching out to us.
Right.
You know, are we reachable?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Well,
I do want to say with regard to these moments, I think they do provide us, like you've said, that there's also opportunities. Like these are moments for us to actually consider, if we need to, larger realities. Sometimes you can have a dedicated moment. Knowledge is with me. Where am I? You check in to see where that is. You say, given my state, I reach out for what I most deeply know. And then you can actually dedicate the moment to something, a prayer for the world, even. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to make not an investment, but I am going to, I don't know how to make, can't find the word, but I am going to give something to the environment
from this place.
Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to consider this issue or this reality, and I'm available to it. And then when you conclude, you go back to what you're doing and your condition and where you're at and what you're up for and what's next and what you were there. It's almost like you're building a parallel reality, side by side. There's the larger reality that you have the opportunity to engage with, however incrementally, and there's the world and your life and what's in front of you and all of that. And there's tons of stuff we need to know there too. So if we can bring a part of this intelligence to that world, you know what I mean, and depart that world for a moment and rest here and engage here and go back.
Yeah, it's almost like there's as you engage in that process, there's a process of, that's almost like the word roots. The roots are kind of going down, but I guess it's sideways.
Right.
But the roots are kind of really,
right.
You know,
right.
You're sort of more rooted in that greater reality.
Yes. Yeah. Right. You know, and having done this, it's almost like exercising a muscle, right? This reflex to go to stillness and take a moment to see, is there anything I need to know? Knowledge is with me. Where am I? Is there anything, you know? And you may find yourself just out and about. And then this kind of, it's sort of like what the state of being may onset, which is to say, for a moment, I mean, I'm finding it increasingly when I'm out and about and have the opportunity to engage with other people, is to actually sort of drop into the state and in a way engage with those people from there.
Mm-hmm.
From there. And I've had some really special moments with people.
Mm.
So anyway, and often something spontaneously emerges from me to them, which is, can I ask you, what strikes you about the future? Or, yeah, what are your impressions of blah, blah? And there's just this moment, and it's like, wow, well,
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a little bit more dimension to the moment and to the engagement.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's related to this exercise, whether you want to call it that, of stepping off the surface for a moment
Mm-hmm.
and engaging in a larger reality. Yeah.
Well, it seems like a good as note as any to
Yeah.
wrap up our conversation.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's good to have a chance the space to just unpack something like this a little bit
Right.
more,
Right.
like bringing forward memories or, key things that we've learned throughout the journey.
Yeah.
It would be really nice to like have someone else with us here
Oh yeah.
and like go into their world,
Oh yeah.
in their life.
Oh
what are
yeah.
they seeing? So
Good.
look forward to that.
Yeah, definitely.
And to our next conversation, which is going to be June 26th, that Thursday. So I'll see you there.
Okay, great.